Hello and welcome to the new Global Eye show from the BBC World Service, coming to you this week from Havana. In the next half hour, we will showcase the best of our global investigative journalism and reportage. I'm Will Grant, the BBC's correspondent here in Cuba. The island is famous for its iconic cigars and classic cars, and of course its communist revolution. But today's Cuba is in the grip of its worst economic crisis since the Cold War. And later we'll bring you an extraordinary investigation from the BBC I-team into the mysterious disappearance of a prominent cleric, Musa al-Sadr, in 1970s Libya. This spawned endless conspiracy theories, and some believe it even changed the fate of the Middle East. And we'll meet the crew of a hero ship fixing Africa's undersea cables and stopping internet blackouts.
You get heroes that save lives. I'm a hero, I save communication.
I've spent almost 20 years reporting from Cuba for the BBC and lived here for the best part of a decade. In that time, I've seen the island experience some of the most acute highs and lows of its modern history, from hopefulness during a historic thaw with Washington under President Obama to desperation amid rolling blackouts and food shortages. The country's communist-run government has survived decades of punishing economic sanctions imposed by one of Cuba's nearest neighbors, the United States. Originally intended to topple the father of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, in 2018, the United Nations estimated the total cost of the economic sanction on the Cuban economy at more than $130 billion. In 2014, a thaw between the two countries under the Obama administration meant that US citizens could travel to Cuba more freely, helping to attract some 5 million visitors a year. However, the policy was later reversed by his successors, Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
On this trip, I've caught up with the tourism minister, who accepts tighter sanctions are hurting the island.
El turismo en Cuba se mantiene vivo, se mantiene luchando, que hay que estar consciente para realizar el turismo en Cuba, que tiene que enfrentar los obstáculos que no tiene ningún país de la competencia. Que en el primer mandato de Trump se hayan tomado 263 medidas, la mayoría para destruir el turismo cubano. De esas 263 medidas que jugaron un rol fundamental, como por ejemplo la actividad de crucero. ¿Qué sería del turismo cubano si no tuviéramos si tuviéramos aún la actividad de crucero? Tal vez tuviéramos un millón más de visitantes.
The COVID pandemic also hit the island hard, especially businesses which rely on a steady stream of tourists to survive.
Now, this brand new 5-star hotel behind me, known locally as the Torre K, has just been completed and is now the tallest building in Cuba. Yet it's also the source of much anger among Cubans, who see it, lying virtually empty, as an expensive symbol of the revolution's economic mismanagement.
Fue un derroche. No tenía que haber sido tan opulento, no tenía que haber sido tan extravagante. Es una mala gestión de todos los recursos.
Como pueblo quisiera que se hicieran otras cosas, hospitales y todo lo que uno realmente necesita. Bueno, es un poco complicado en todas las esferas, realmente, tanto en la parte social, la parte estudiantil, porque estamos viviendo muchos cambios ahora.
While the US embargo has caused serious harm to the Cuban economy, so too have years of mismanagement by the island's authorities. Decades of underinvestment, particularly in crumbling Soviet-era energy infrastructure, have led to nationwide power blackouts. Amid rising inflation and a devalued peso, Cubans are struggling to meet their basic needs, facing severe shortages in petrol and food.
In July 2021, anger at the worsening situation here boiled over. Spontaneous demonstrations erupted across the island, a very rare thing in Cuba. Police cracked down hard, arresting hundreds of young Cubans, many of whom received long prison sentences. There have since been some lower-level street demonstrations, particularly over the blackouts, but dissidents to the communist-run system are still not tolerated, with tight restrictions on the freedom of expression and assembly, and most independent journalists in prison or forced into exile.
Tourism is one of the island's main sources of foreign currency earnings, along with dollars and euros sent to relatives by Cubans working abroad. Those without access to this must rely on a rapidly devaluing local peso currency, which, along with rising inflation, has led to an acute cost of living crisis. That's all led to an exodus. Around 1 in 10 people have left the island, particularly younger Cubans, leading to fears of a brain drain among doctors, engineers, and teachers.
The former president, Raúl Castro, Fidel's younger brother and one of the original generation of revolutionaries, chose the current leader, Miguel Díaz-Canel, to be his successor. From day one, President Díaz-Canel has preached a message of continuity in the island's socialist politics and economy, but he is facing an even more hostile administration across the Florida Straits, especially with one of the US's biggest anti-Castro voices as Secretary of State in Marco Rubio.
They're going to have a choice to make, those that are in charge there. Do they open up to the world? Do they allow the individual Cuban to have control over their economic and political destiny, even though it threatens the security and stability of the regime? Or do they triple down and just say, we'd rather be the owners and controllers of a fourth world country that's falling apart?
With pressure growing on the leadership both at home and abroad, people here are wondering what the future will hold for the Cuban Revolution. Will the state eventually ease its stranglehold over the economy to allow greater private enterprise? Or will President Díaz-Canel's continuity succeed in keeping this decades-old revolution alive? In 1978, a prominent Shia cleric, Musa al-Sadr, vanished in Libya. For many of his supporters, solving the mystery of his fate is as significant as that of the killing of John F. Kennedy. Now, after months of investigative work, the I-Team, led by reporter Mo Shrif, has found that a body in a secret mortuary may hold vital clues, bringing a decades-old mystery back into focus.
For years, I've been investigating the case of the former leader of Lebanon's Shia community, Imam Musa Sadr. In 1978, he mysteriously disappeared. In 2011, my colleague was tipped off about a secret morgue in Libya. There he found a body with features that resembled the Imam. Could this be the face of Musa Sadr? Has dramatic new evidence solved a decades-long mystery? It's a story so sensitive that our BBC team was imprisoned and interrogated for 6 days when filming in Libya. Imam Musa Sadr rose to fame in the 1960s as the leader of Lebanon's Shia community.
أولاً مفكر كبير وثانياً قائد كبير. وجدت أنه حركته هي حركة حقوق الإنسان، حركة المحرومين، وأشبه بحركة مارتن لوثر كينغ لحد ما، يعني هذيك كانت لون بينما هذه كانت عملية حقوق وحرمان.
Musa Sadr spoke out on behalf of the poor, no matter what their religion.
كانت علاقاتي جيدة مع الطوائف الأخرى، وكنت أسعى لخدمة الفقير المسيحي في سور كما كنت أعمل لخدمة الفقير المسلم بعيد عن الطائفية.
But Sadr's campaign upset members of the powerful Shia elite, as well as leftist hardliners. He made a fateful journey to Libya in August 1978, a trip from which he never returned. I'm meeting Qasim Ahmedi, a Beirut-based journalist. He was in Libya during the uprising against Colonel Gaddafi in 2011.
ليبيا كانت دولة يعني مسكرة للصحفيين، ما حدا بيعرف، لا يعني حتى أسماء الوزراء ما بنعرفهم جوا، يعني بنعرف معمر القذافي. بيجينا خبر من المعارضين هناك إنه في وزير بده يجي هلا بده يعلن استقالته. إنه هذا الشخص هو مصطفى عبد الجليل، وزير العدل الليبي. قل له أنا في موضوع تاني بدي أسألك عنه، هو موضوع إمام الصدر.
The Minister of Justice told Qasim the Libyan authorities had concocted a story that Sadr had left Libya and gone on to Italy. Then, the Minister of Justice delivered a bombshell.
ثاني يوم وثالث يوم زور انه هو ماشي لايطاليا وزوروا اوراقه وقتلوه داخل السجون.
هل كان القذافي على علم بكل شاردة وواردة؟
القذافي هو الأول هو الأخير في كل القرارات.
Libya's former justice minister was saying Sadr had been murdered on Gaddafi's orders. But Qasim then tells me something equally astonishing.
أنا من شبكة العلاقات اللي معي على الأرض بيجي أحد الأشخاص اللي بيتعاون معي بيقول لي إنه اليوم لقوا براد في جثث، وهالجثث بعد ما حدا مختص كشف عليها أكدوا إنه عمرها أكثر من 30 سنة. ونحكى عم بيقول هو ضمن المعلومات اللي هيدا إنه ممكن يكون جثمان موسى الصدر بيناتهم. باخد أنا سيارة وبروح المساء يعني قبل الغروب بشوي، وبروح على هالمكان. غرفة مقفلة ومحطوط عليها حطوا عليها حدا مثل الحرس.
An attendant showed Qasim the morgue. Qasim filmed their conversation.
انحكى انه ممكن موسى الصدر كان بيناتهم، هل سمعت هذا الخبر؟
الناس اللي جو يدوروا في الحالات هذه أهله قالوا ممكن يكون فيها مش معروف.
شفت إذا موسى الصدر؟
أنا ما نعرفش صراحة.
الوجه مبين؟
في دي وجه مبين، في دي من طول الزمن مش توا فينا نشوفه عادي ما في مشكلة. تعال شوف.
Sadr was unusually tall. One of the bodies seemed to match. Qasim took a photo.
فأنا شغلتين لفت لي نظري فيها، أول شيء الملامح واللون والشعر، وتاني شيء إنه تم إعدامه هيدا.
ليك كأنه قوص.
أي على الأرجح إعدام. وأنت ليش بدك تحتفظ بجثة أكثر من 30 سنة إذا ما كان لها أهمية؟
It was an extraordinary story, but I was skeptical. This photo was all we had to go on. A team at Bradford University has been developing a unique algorithm. It's called deep face recognition, and it identifies complex similarities between photographs. It's been tested on millions of images and has proven to be extremely reliable and has been used in various international investigations.
Oh, yeah.
The algorithm is designed to identify people from imperfect images, like the one Qasim had taken in the morgue. The algorithm assesses two photographs to see if they're images of the same person. Professor O'Gale is going to compare the image from the morgue with 4 genuine photos of Sadr. The higher the number on the scale, the more likely it's the same person or a family member. According to Professor O'Gale, if it's below 50, they're probably not related. Between 60 and 70 means either the same person or a close relative. 70 or more is a direct match.
The way a computer looks at the faces, it looks at the color, the texture, also various shapes of the face. So you got the eyes, the nose, the forehead, and so on, and these proportions. And it will actually create a number of what we call features, or these are numerical values. So it can create like thousands of these numbers. And what it's doing is it's comparing these thousands of numbers from one face to the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this image against everything else that we know is him. So what we are getting here are 58. It's in the 60s. So these are actually, given the image, these are not bad numbers.
A number of facial features are missing in the morgue photo, so it's not ideal. Even so, it scores highly against all 4 images of Musa Sadr.
60s, they are either siblings, close relatives, you know, that kind of thing. So there is a high probability that this could be him.
Wow. To test this conclusion, the professor compares our photo with images of 100 Middle Eastern men. None are related to Sadr, but they all resemble him in some way. Then he compares the morgue photo with pictures of Sadr's family members. The family photos score much higher than the 100 random faces. But the best results are when our photo is compared with pictures of Musa Sadr himself. Back in 2011, when Qasim was in Libya, he found a country in chaos, as the footage he shot clearly shows. If he really had discovered Sadr's body, we too had to go to Libya. People close to Sadr had warned him not to accept Colonel Gaddafi's invitation. Nevertheless, on the 25th of August 1978, he flew to Tripoli, together with his chief of staff, Sheikh Mohammed Ya'oub, and a journalist, Abbas Badruddin. Witnesses say Sadr was treated rudely when he arrived. At his hotel, he was prevented from making international calls. His frustration mounted as Gaddafi repeatedly delayed their meeting.
6 أيام ما قدر يقابل القذافي. هو كمان ناطر المواعيد بس غيره اجى المواعيد مع انه كان في اللبنانيه مش من يعني باهميته.
At 1:30 p.m. on the 31st of August, after 6 days of waiting, Sadr was seen being driven away from the hotel in a government car. All confirmed reports of him and his companions end at this point. Until now, because Qasim discovered that Sadr had later encountered the colonel at a mosque in Tripoli. Back in 2011, Qasim had tracked down 2 people who had been in the mosque that day. Both had seen Sadr and Gaddafi arguing over a verse in the Quran.
يعني وهن ما بيعرفوا بعض بس عم بيرجعوا بيروا نفس الرواية تقريبا بنفس التفاصيل عن الخلاف حول هاي الصورة أو الآية اللي قالها قذافي.
It's time to look for the morgue where Qasim had found the body. It's somewhere here in central Tripoli, but our trip is about to run into difficulties. We knew we had been under surveillance since we arrived in Libya and were being followed everywhere. It's the right building, but it's no longer a morgue. This was the last thing we were able to film. Shortly after, we were told our filming permits had been revoked. The next day, we were seized and taken to a secret prison, held in solitary confinement and accused of spying. We were blindfolded, repeatedly interrogated, and told no one could help us. Our captors said we'd be there for decades. We spent a traumatic 6 days in detention. After pressure from the BBC and diplomatic intervention, we were released and deported from Libya. A year later, the core team reconvenes in London. Myself, Qasim, the cameraman Namak Khoshnau, and the director, Tom Roberts. We share our experiences of imprisonment and interrogation. An artist is recreating the faces of our jailers.
During the 6 days, in each interrogation they asked me, who were your sources in Libya? The last day, they put me in a car alone with the driver, yeah? He tried to be nice to me. He asked me, you have been to Libya before? I said, yes, I have been to Libya before many times. I covered the revolution here. He said, we don't say revolution, because we were on the other side. We're against the revolution. I said, so you belong to the old regime. He said, yeah, we belong to we are back.
Our interrogators had told us they knew about the secret morgue. They said the employees Qasim met were now dead. Perhaps they also know where the body is. We had paid a heavy price for this investigation. It was disturbing to feel we'd become part of the story. Had we come too close to the truth? This is the annual rally held by Amal, the organization Sadr founded in the 70s. Today, it's a powerful party of the Lebanese Shia, and every year, its leaders call for the Imam's return. They refuse to accept he might be dead, even though there's never been any evidence he's still alive. If he were, he'd now be 97 years old. Nabih Berri, Amal's leader and Speaker of Lebanon's parliament, presents his party's line.
كافة اللقاءات والتحقيقات التي أجريت إنما على العكس ثمة ما يمكن تأكيده أن الإمام الصدر ورفيقيه وحتى فترة وجيزة قبل سقوط النظام الليبي كانوا ينتقلون إلى أقبية السجون الليبية.
Amal say there's no material proof that Sadr was killed, even though Qasim gave them evidence that may be compelling. Back in 2011, he had managed to take a sample containing DNA from the corpse in the secret morgue. A match with a member of the Sadr family would prove beyond doubt whether the body was that of Musa Sadr. Qasim gave the sample and a file of evidence to senior officials in Speaker Berry's office, but they never got back to him. Later, Amal told the BBC the sample had been lost. In Lebanon, the BBC showed the results of the photo analysis to Musa Sadr's eldest son, an investigating judge, and a senior figure from Amal. They were not convinced.
شكركم على اللي عملتوه. مرقنا بهالقصص والحكايات كثيرا و يعني أكثر من نقطة شفتها بالفيلم تثبت لي إنه هيدا ما لنا علاقة فيها.
The Amal official went on to question the veracity of the analysis, as well as the BBC's motivation for undertaking its investigation. Despite the obstacles, we now know a great deal more about what happened to Imam Musa Sadr. We know he was almost certainly murdered, and we may even have found his body. But until the current Libyan authorities and the Amal leadership have the will to examine the facts, neither this mystery nor this remarkable man can be laid to rest.
Now, here's some of the best World Service content you can enjoy from the last few days. BBC Eye Investigations exposes the growing problem of Russia's teenagers using a synthetic drug known as Miao, or the poor man's cocaine. We follow the drug chain from production labs to the darknet to couriers to find out more about lives destroyed by addiction. And John Simpson speaks to the BBC's expert correspondents on Unspun World to review the week's global news stories. You can catch up on the significance of those crucial elections in Moldova that we investigated on this programme 2 weeks ago. Watch both of these on iPlayer or BBC World Service YouTube.
Last year, millions of businesses and citizens across Africa, from Lagos to Nairobi, saw messaging apps crash and bank transactions fail as a result of accidental damage to internet cables buried deep beneath the seabed. That damage was fixed by a ship the size of a football field that cruises hundreds of miles a year to keep the continent online. Reporter Daniel Dadsey went aboard to meet the crew keeping Africa linked to the world.
Every time you send a message or browse the internet, you rely on a vast hidden network, one that relies on certain cables. But these cables laid across the ocean floor are fragile. When they break, entire countries can go offline. Unlike other continents that have extensive networks of internet infrastructure on shore, Africa's internet mainly depends on undersea fiber optic cables. They link Africa to data servers that allow people on the continent to get connected to the internet. Since some African countries only have one undersea cable serving them, when there is damage to it, the entire country could go offline. This ship, the Leon Thevenin, is one of the few in the world that repairs those undersea cables.
So this is the main deck, or the working deck, of the Leon Thevenin, which the crew describe as the heart of the operation. Now, the cable will be fixing over the next few days looks a lot like this. It has hair-thin fiberglass core, which is where your text messages, your streaming travels through across the ocean, and it's protected by different levels of material, some plastic, some metal, some copper. And over the next few days, the crew will be making sure that a cable which is on the floor of the ocean bed will be replaced by a piece of cable that looks just like this.
The work starts by finding the damaged part of the cable. The crew does this by sending electrical pulses through the cable, looking for the point where the signal is lost. Once they have a location, the remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, is deployed.
A signal is sent from the station on the cable, and then the signal travels along the cable, and then the ship tracks the signal, and where we lose the signal, we know the fault is there.
The ROV moves in for a closer look. It scans for anchor damage, fishing net scars, or natural breaks caused by strong ocean currents.
Typically, cables break because of humans. Most of the time, it's due to anchors, fishing, trawlers. So typically, you would see scars from trawling. Okay, they're going to pick up.
Once the ROV pinpoints the fault, it cuts the cable and it is brought to the surface.
Okay, ROV off the surface.
This is a delicate operation. The cable weighs several tons and must be pulled up carefully to avoid further damage. Now the jointers take over to fix the cables together through a process called splicing. Each fiber strand, thinner than a human hair, must be perfectly aligned. If they get it wrong, entire networks will remain offline.
I call this the heart of the operation. This is where we fix the cable. This is where we have two parts and we make the impossible possible.
After hours of cable repair and numerous tests to ensure it works the way it should, it's time to return the cable to the bottom of the ocean bed.
Tuesday morning here on the Leon Thevenin, it's been about 6 days since we arrived at the spot for the repair off the coast of Accra. And as you can see behind me, the cable is finally being returned to the ocean floor. It was a long, tedious process for the Leon Thevenin's crew, and all of the crew members, you can see, have on their faces a sense of satisfaction and relief after the successful operation.
We're very fortunate to be part of delivering such an important product to Africa and to the rest of the world, really. We're the link between Africa and the world to Africa.
Because of me, countries stay connected. Because of me, IT people at home, they have work. You understand? Because I bring the main feed in. You get heroes that save lives. I'm a hero, I save communication for countries, for people, you know, for bloggers. I save them.
Thanks for joining me in Havana. Global Eye will be back again next week. Goodbye.